Good morning, everyone. We're reading in Book 2, Canto 3, The Glory and the Fall of Life. Swapati has been shown the whole range of life worlds, from the lowest to the highest, and he's able to see the nature of those different worlds. And at the top of page 123, it says, "But here were worlds lifted halfway to heaven." They're not the very highest levels, and nor are they the very deepest levels. Somewhere in between. There's a veil between the Supreme and the world, but not the shadowy wall of matter that separates us from the higher life worlds. It says that in those halfway worlds, forms not too remote from our human grasp, some passion of the inviolate purity of the highest levels could break through, a ray of the original bliss, like a ray of sunlight bursting through clouds. And then he told us that heaven's joys might have been earth's, if earth were pure. The problem is with the mixed nature of matter, of our earth matter. Heaven's joys could have been earth's if earth were pure. They could have reached our divinized sense and heart, some natural felicities, bright, extreme, some thrill of supernature's absolutes. All strengths could laugh and sport on earth's hard roads and never feel her cruel edge of pain. All love could play and nowhere nature's shame. This gives an indication of the divine nature of earth that Sri Aurobindo tells us is our eventual destiny, a divine life on earth, in earthly bodies. Would you read on from there, please, Patricia?
But she has stabled her dreams in matter's courts, and still her doors are barred to things supreme. These worlds could feel God's breath visiting their tops. Some glimmer of the Transcendent's hem was there. Across the white aeonic silences, immortal figures of embodied joy traversed wide spaces, near to eternity's sleep. Pure mystic voices in beatitudes, a peak love's immaculate sweetnesses, calling his untouched to thrill the worlds, his blissful hands to seize on nature's limbs, his sweet, intolerant might of union, to take all being into his saviour arms, drawing to his pity the rebel and the waif, to force on them they refuse.
Thank you. Anybody would like to ask anything about these lines that Patricia read?
I have a question about line 257.
Yes. She, yeah. That is, it is nature, but it's also life. No? And that's what he's going to tell us about next. How come she has stabled her dreams in matter's courts? Why has she chosen a material world? But the worlds that Swapati is seeing at the moment are not material worlds.
Immortal figures of embodied joy.
Yes, that's what all the bodies are there. Yeah. Patricia read the line 262. Immortal figures of embodied joy. Those are the figures, the bodies that you see moving in those worlds. They are made, they are wearing their bliss bodies. Sorry, I haven't got it, Manohar. Tell. Oh, the waif. Sorry, yes. A waif. A waif is a lost child. So the rebel and that one who is lost and thinks he's forever lost, the Lord of Love, wants to take them into his arms, to force on them the happiness they refuse. Shall we go on? Jocelyn, would you read?
A chant, hymeneal, the unseen divine, the flaming rhapsody of white desire, and immortal music in the heart, and walk the slumbering here of ecstasy. The pure, fierier sense had there its form. The burning urge, no earthly can open. One drew a large, unburdened, spacious breath, and the heart sped from beat to rapturous beat. The voice of time sang of immortal joy, anticipation and a real pride. The moments came with ecstasy on their wings. Beauty unreachable moved heaven's veil, exalted from boundaries in the vast of dreams. The cry of bird of wonder called from the sky to the deathless people of the shores of light. Creation leaped straight from the hands of God. Marvel and rapture wandered in the world. Only to be was free light. Life was a happy laughter of the soul, and joy was king in love for me.
Thank you. So these words are only halfway to heaven, but still they sound paradisal compared with our world. No? A chant, hymeneal, a marriage hymn to the unseen divine. There is a veil there. The divine is unseen, but still his presence is felt behind the veil. And there's this, like a marriage song, calling to him to come out from behind the veil. And that's such a wonderful music, a flaming rhapsody of white desire, a desire that is pure, that calls an immortal music into the heart and woke the slumbering ear of ecstasy, the intensest form of delight. In that world, the senses are much more sensitive than they are here in our world. They're purer, they are fierier, they feel much more intensely. Our human bodies, our earthly bodies, wouldn't be able to hold the intensity of those sensations. But there in that world, one drew a different kind of breath. One is experiencing a different kind of prana, a large, unburdened, spacious breath, and the heart beating more rapidly. The heart sped, hurried from beat to rapturous beat. And it's as if the whole movement of time, all the moments and happenings, this is all singing of the Immortal's joy, that sense of the movement of time. It's an inspiration and a lyric cry, a love song. The moments came with ecstasy on their wings. Beauty unimaginable. We can't even begin to imagine that beauty. There it moves bare, without covering, as in heaven, and it's absolved from boundaries. There are no limits in those vasts of dream. We can hear the call, the cry of the birds of wonder. Bird song is one of the great pleasures of our earth, but obviously there the bird's song is even more moving and delightful. And it is heard by the deathless people of the shores of light. The shore marks the borderline between the land and the sea.
I have a question, because if he's using words of wondering, meaning this, or is the word going like that in English? No.
No, in English we don't have a bird of wonder. No. As I said, there is something paradisal about that place. It's like the paradise in the Bible, where creation leaped straight from the hands of God. It's fresh and young and pure. Marvel and rapture wandered in the ways. All experiences are astonishing and delightful. And just to exist, just to be, was a supreme delight. In that world, life, differently from in our world, there life was a happy laughter of the soul. And the ruler of that world is joy, and his advisor is love. Joy was king, with love for minister. Yes?
I have a question about line 276. And the question is, do you know what's a fierier sense?
A fierier sense. Yes, more fiery. So there's more fire, more intensity and energy in it. It's as if matter dulls our senses. Of course, even here we can have intense sensations, but there it is both purer, it's not mixed and obscured, and it is more intense, more fiery. Tara, would you read?
The spirit's witnessness of what is there lies contrary to her lover's financial friends and her extreme healing actions of harmony, indulgence with a tender purity clean and nursed resolve of her maternal bliss. There are numbers who so forced should not live, ignorance or the thin shade protecting life, imagination, the free will of truth, pleasure, the candidate for heaven's path, the intellect was beauty's worshipper, strength of the state of calmness to the fierier, power laid its head upon the breath of bliss.
Thank you. So again, he speaks about the way that in that world, the luminousness, the light of the Spirit, all the light-filled qualities of the Spirit were bodied there. They are embodied in those worlds. And in those worlds, life's contraries, the opposites that here give us so much pain with their clash and confusion, there they are lovers or natural friends. They are in harmony with each other. And even her extremes in one direction or another, the heights and the deeps, they were keen edges of harmony. When they meet, it's not a painful clash, it's an intensification of different kinds of delight. Oh, I've lost my place. So he gives some examples of these congeries of life. Indulgence. To us, this is not always a positive word. No? Especially we think that self-indulgence is not advisable. And when mothers indulge their children, we say, oh, she's spoiling him. No? But here he says that the indulgence, that generosity of the mother, comes with a tender purity and helps the growing soul to grow into his maturity, nursing the God on her maternal breast. In that world, none of the beings were weak in the sense of being impure and open to falsehood. So falsehood couldn't live there. There was something like ignorance, but it's just a thin veil protecting light, so that the full light is not dazzling to the inner eyes. Imagination is not pure fantasy. It's an expression of the free will of truth. And pleasure, which is again one of those mixed words for us, self-indulgence in pleasure. No? Their pleasure is a candidate for heaven's fire, the pure flame of heavenly delight. In our words, intellect, we may think it is something harsh and dry and abstract, but there the intellect was beauty's worshipper. Strength was the slave of calm spiritual law. It doesn't indulge in its own strength. It serves the calm spiritual law. And power doesn't force itself on anyone. It laid its head upon the breasts of bliss. These are expressions of harmonies of opposites that cause us suffering here on earth. Kyung-hye, would you read? We're on line 304. There were summit glories inconceivable. On page 124, line 304.
There were summit glories inconceivable. Autonomy of wisdom is absolute, and high dependence of power wisdom reminds ecstasy of the being soul, thrown in the power of the transcendent ray, a vision of renders, a dream of humanity. In some bright kingdom, moon is regarded, symbols, cloudy, synthesis of the God, lightness, presences, reason, on seats of marvelous dreams, high divinations and autocracy, and valorous strength and imperative mind. All of them, they were great and beautiful. All beings for a royal stamp of power.
Thank you. So he had spoken about power, and now he says that in these middle worlds there are higher levels, summit glories, like the highest levels of a mountain, inconceivable, difficult for us to grasp with our minds, impossible for us to grasp with our minds. And those are high regions. Wisdom is maintaining her self-rule. She rules herself and all around. Autonomy. Autonomy is when nobody tells you what to do. You are able to rule yourself and your circumstances. So, autonomies of wisdom's still self-rule. And then there are some slightly lower levels which are dependencies They depend on the sun of wisdom, which is so pure. Those levels are theocracies. A theocracy is a state that's ruled by the divine, by the Lord. So where the seeing soul lives, it is the Lord and the Lord's light that rules. And there the beings are throned in the power of the ray of consciousness that comes from the transcendent, beyond the manifestation. So in those summit regions, it's as if people are moving about, a vision of grandeurs, a dream of magnitudes, of great things and beings moving around in those sun-bright kingdoms. And they form assemblies. They come together, crowded senates of the gods, as if the gods are meeting in a kind of parliament. These are the powers of life reigning on seats of marble will. Sri Aurobindo uses this word marble to indicate something that's very powerful and fixed, but also pure. On marble, on seats of marble concentration.
It describes also the Senate building in Rome.
Yes, where they sat on seats of marble. They're right. Yes. So these powers, high dominations, autocracies, beings who are able to rule their own realms, and laureled strengths. This again refers to the to the great conquerors. They were allowed to wear a wreath of laurel, and armed imperative mights. All objects there were great and beautiful, and all beings wore a royal stamp of power. It's a kind of aristocracy of the life worlds. Ton, you'll read, please.
There sat the
oligarchies,
natural law. Proud, violent heads served one calm monarch world. All the souls were apostles, dawned within. There met the ardent mutual infinities, masterly joy and the joy of servitude, imposed by love on love's heart that obeys, and love's body held beneath the rapturous
yoke.
All was again meeting King Nemesis. For worship lifts the worshippers both strength, close to the God's pride, and bliss his soul adores. The ruler there is one with all he rules, to him who serves with a free, equal heart. Obedience is his princely training school. His nobility's coronet and privilege. His faith is a high nature's ideal. His service is spiritual sovereignty.
Thank you. So this is continuing the theme of power, different kinds of power. And this is in a very pure life state. So there sat the oligarchies of natural law. Somebody can explain oligarchy? Tuan?
Ultimate power in the hands of the few.
I think it's the rule by the few. Yeah, selected ones. Yes.
That have been selected by everyone.
What? These ones are natural oligarchs. They are naturally rulers, naturally powerful people. No? but they do have somebody above them. Their proud, violent heads served one calm monarch brow. There's a ruler above them all. So in those states, all the soul's postures put on divinity, whatever level they were at. In that world, the ardent mutual intimacies, shared intimacies and delights of the joy of mastery, of ruling, and the joy of servitude. And this joy of ruling and the joy of servitude, these meet in love. When the joy of mastery is imposed by love on love's heart, which willingly obeys, and even the body of love is controlled, but that control, that yoke, which is the symbol of servitude, is a rapturous yoke. It brings great delight. So in that world, all was a game of meeting kinglinesses, royalties. All of them are like kings, or they have a kingly nature, and they meet, and their relationships are those of kingliness, of royalty. And he says this is possible because of that purity, because worship, the act of worshipping, of course, in a way, it's an act of humility. You bow down and you worship somebody higher than you. But true worship lifts up the worshipper's bowed strength. He bows down and he worships, but even that act of worship lifts his strength up to the pride and bliss of the God that he's worshipping, that he's adoring. The ruler there, he's not just a despot. He feels one with all he rules. And then Aurobindo makes a general statement. It's not only in that world, it's also in our world, that to him who serves with a free, equal heart, obedience is his princely training's school, his nobility's coronet and privilege, his faith a high nature's idiom, his service a spiritual sovereignty. There is some high ideal like this in human beings, that if you serve your ruler, the one that you adopt and recognize as your ruler, if you are happy to obey him, to serve him with a free and equal heart, accepting all his commands, then that obedience trains you in your own aristocracy. You become a better prince from learning that way of serving with a free, equal heart. That kind of obedience is even the mark of your nobility. It's your crown, it's your privilege, and your loyalty to your ruler, your faith with him, is the natural speech or the natural way of being of a high nature, an aristocratic nature. And serving him becomes a spiritual sovereignty. You yourself become a ruler of your own nature and your own environment. Is this clear?
Yeah.
Have you got a question, Anandi?
No.
No, you want to share something?
I would like to share something that possibly everybody could understand, but I'm coming from South America, and I was in Argentina when Evo Morales, the first Indian president of our continent, was taking power. I was with the radio. What he said to people, I don't know if I'm going to be able to say. he said, now I'm serving you and I'm waiting for you to tell me what I have to do. I was crying and I said, I never listened to the president in our country to say that. Because for them, no, what Shraddhavan said is there. Thanks Lord. They keep this serving.
You wanted to ask something, Patricia?
I'm just drawn to make a comparison, or to use this again as a symbol held in here of what Auroville can be with its diverse contraries, but serving one, and just looking at the fulfillment of it.
Yes, the people who were close to Mother, they had this experience, no, of joyful service and growth through service. So that's the opportunity that Auroville offers us. Yes. Yes.
This proud, violent head,
One calm monarch brow. Yes, the top of page 125, second line. It's the ideal of a feudal society where there's one king who is somehow accepted by the other nobles, who in theory are his equals, his peers, no? But they've accepted that he's the top one. They had this, of course, in ancient India also. That's a little bit the story of the Mahabharata. That it's the duty of the king to prove his superiority, that he's fit to be the Chakravarti, to be the one who rules over all the others. So all these heroes we read about in the Mahabharata, they are these proud, violent heads. But finally, in the end, in the Ramayana, they all accept to obey Rama. What is not clear to you?
So the meaning is that being calm and wise is above proud, violent heads. So this quality of being
yes,
wise and
but those proud,
the violent heads,
but those violent heads, they accept to obey that one calm monarch brow. They could challenge him, but then he would have to show them his power. Yeah. But yes, the supreme ruler should be calm. That's true.
Shraddhavan, it's very interesting. I understand when I serve to Jerry Joshi, who is the chairman of AUROBINDO'S, every morning I bring back to him flour and coconut. I don't talk at all. Where is chairman? I go every meeting. I never give question and learn. I understand when I serve him in the silence.
And that way you grow.
Yes. Exactly. It's very, very, very interesting. It touched me so much. So much. But always, a lot of men nearing, rarely women, but always take my hand and silence. Give me something, emanation, vibration. Always give me some knowledge. When I go from recital in the road, I receive a lot of understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It says here, his princely training school. I think this used to be an ideal of those, for example, the gurukuls of ancient India, where the kings sent their princes to live quite humbly in the guru's household and fetch water for him and serve him in all different ways. But that obedience, in that way they were learning the qualities that they need to be rulers. Like the Argonauts in Greece, they also studied like that under Chiron. It's been the ideal of aristocratic education through the ages. It hasn't always been as ideal as it should be because of our human imperfections. So all this, what we were reading this morning, was about power, about the quality of power. And now he will speak about realms where knowledge joined creative power. This is a new combination.
Where is that power? You think it is called our power?
Well, it started on page 124, line 303, where he spoke about strength and power. Power laid its head upon the breasts of bliss. And then he talked about these sun-bright kingdoms and life's puissances and all these things. And it ended with this beautiful image of the princely training school, and that service can be a characteristic of spiritual sovereignty. And then he's now taking another step. Yes. Is it your turn to read, Anandi? Yes.
There were realms where knowledge joined creative power. It took her home and made her all his own. The grand illuminate says the gleaming limbs, and filled them with passion of his grace. And all his body was its transparent rose, and all his soul a counterpart of his soul.
Yes.
Transfigured by wisdom's touch, her days became a luminous sacrifice, an immortal moth in happy and endless fire. She burned with a sweet, intolerable blaze. A captive life went along her. His wide sky she built, her world anew. She gave the mind's calm paid the mortal speed. Thinking and live, to live for the soul's soul, to live in an impetus to know and see. As a splendor grasped her, a puissance to him inclined, she crowned the idea, a king in part the rose, with her magical
scepter.
In thought's gate, made forms his own worditions written, and her acts, the living body.
This is about the union of knowledge and power. Scepter. The scepter is this rod which is the sign of the king's rule or the queen's rule. The monarch's rule is scepter. So among those high life worlds, there are some where knowledge and creative power rule together. And the imagery that he's using is reminiscent of things that have happened in history, but also of many of the old legends. How a queen is ruling a kingdom on her own. Perhaps you remember the story of Chitrangada. And then Arjuna comes and he's able to conquer that kingdom. But it becomes a very happy union where the king and the queen work together. So it's like that. The creative power is the female part, and knowledge comes as her lord. He joins creative power in her high home, and he makes her all his own. And it's a kind of marriage. The grand illuminate, the great one who has knowledge, seized the gleaming limbs of that creative power and filled them with the passion of his ray, till all her body was its transparent house. She's full of knowledge also, and all her soul becomes a counterpart of his soul. So the creative power gets uplifted by that union, apotheosized. He uses the word transfigured. They are very close in meaning. by the touch of wisdom, the creative power, her days became a luminous sacrifice to the higher power of knowledge. So she delights in this. She's like an immortal moth in happy and endless fire. She's burning in that sweet, intolerable blaze of knowledge. A conquered queen, a captive life, wedded her conqueror. And that transforms her world. In his wide sky of knowledge, she built her world anew. And she contributes to his knowledge. She gave to mind's calm pace the motor's speed. She makes it much more dynamic. To thinking, she brings a need to live what the soul saw. This is the dynamic, the creative aspect. No? To living, she brings the other impulse, the impulse to know and to see. His splendor grasped her. Her puissance, her power to him clung. She crowned the idea, the high thought, a king in purple robes, and put her magic serpent scepter in thought's grip. We saw earlier how the creative power is like an enchantress. She can do magic. No? She can rule those occult worlds. So she has this scepter, perhaps similar to the scepter of Aesculapius, where we have two serpents. And these are powers, no? Life powers, these two serpents, yes. So she has a serpent scepter too, but she puts it into his grip and to the form of his inward vision. She gives them forms. And she makes her acts as the creative power, the living body of his will. So this is a kind of ideal union between knowledge and power. The image continues. Helmut.
A flaming thunder, a creator. His victor light rose on the deathless force. The central mighty terror for the God. Light thrown his mind. A double majesty. Words were there of a happiness great and great, and action tinged with dream, laughter with hope, and passion there was great for its desire, until it heard the near approach of God. Words were there of a childlike mirth and joy, a carefree youthfulness of mind and heart, found in the body of heaven and sea. To give an aureole halo round desire, and treat the deified animal in the wings to divine gambols of love and beauty and peace. On a radiant soil that gazed at heaven's smile, a swift light impulse sprinted not nor stopped. It knew not how to pray. Heavy were its tears. Their word was play, and play the only word. The task of heaven again was golden fire, a celestial bacchanal, forever pure, unscathed by faintness of the mortal frame. Light was an eternity of righteousness, age never fades, care never light.
Thank you. So the first sentence which Helmut read belongs to that union of life with mind. A flaming thunder, a creator flash, his victor light, the light of knowledge, rides on that energetic horse of the creative powers, deathless force. And they are so closely united that they're actually in one body. A centaur is a creature which has the upper body of a man and the body of a horse. So that's a symbol of that union of knowledge with life power. So together, life throned with mind, a double majesty. They are equal rulers. But then Sri Aurobindo speaks of other worlds lifted halfway to heaven. Worlds were there of a happiness great and grave, calm, serene happiness, of action tinged with dream, laughter with thought. It's this seriousness and delight going together. Passion there could wait for its desire until it heard the near approach of God. There may be passionate feelings, dreams, ideals, wishes, but no impatience, waiting until the divine sanction comes to the fulfillment. But there were also worlds of a childlike mirth and joy, a very youthful, childlike happiness, carefree youthfulness of mind and heart, found in the body, a heavenly instrument. So that youthfulness, he says, lit an aureate halo, a lovely golden aura around desire, and set free, freed the deified animal in the limbs. We've got animal bodies, and our animal bodies are usually not very divine, but potentially they are divine. And in that life world, the divinized animal in the body is set free to divine gambols of love and beauty and bliss. Gambols, it's those happy, spontaneous movements of young animals. They skip about, enjoying the youthful body. So in those worlds, on a radiant soil, the soil itself is full of light, and it looks up at the smiling sanction of heaven. A swift life impulse, stinted not nor stopped, continues to stint, means to hold back, to keep something back, to be a bit mean. There's nothing like that. The life impulse expresses itself freely and generously and without stopping. It doesn't know how to tire, how to get tired. And if it weeps, its tears are happy tears. There, work was play, and play the only work. The tasks of heaven, a game of godlike might, a joyful expression of godlike power. It's also a celestial bacchanal, forever pure. We've talked about this bacchanal before, no? The procession worshipping the god Bacchus. But these are heavenly bacchanals, forever pure. That doesn't get tired the way our mortal frames get tired. Fate, if we go on rioting and reveling too long. There, life didn't get tired. It was an eternity of raptures, moods. And in that world of eternal youthfulness, age never came. Care never lined the face. No wrinkles. Tomoko, would you read? Sorry.
Imposing on the safety of the star rays and laughter of immortal strength, the nude God-children in their play fields round,
Smiting.
smiting the wind with splendor and with speed, of scorn the sun they made companions, sported with the white mane of passing sea, blue distance trampled to death under their wheels, and wrestled in arenas of their court, imperious in their radiance like the sun,
Shall we pause there? Wait, let's pause there. So these are the nude God children. Anybody would like to ask anything about this? Yes.
Here he describes about the life effect, like age never came, hair never lined the face.
Right.
We too have life.
Yes. But
why we are not having this privilege?
We are not having this privilege yet because the life force has stabled her, stabled her somethings in matter, yes. So we have material bodies, and material bodies are not able to contain all these powers of life and maintain them for very long. No? So in order to go on experiencing and learning from all these life powers, that wears out our bodies, and we have to take them off and put on new ones. No? And we have to do that repeatedly until we can embody all these higher states of life. Yeah?
So matter can match also by lifting its game and it can be the highest state.
Yes, that's the intention. No? That we can contribute to that lifting up of matter. No? And I especially love this description of all these young God children. We see something of this reflected in our own children, of this delightfulness and fearlessness and endless energy and so on. But for us it is only a period in life. We're not able to sustain it all that long. We can go on carrying that energy and that ideal in our hearts, but the material, the physical body is not able to keep up with it. And that's just typical of this state of evolution that we're in now. It's not meant to last forever. There's been a time when the body couldn't express itself at all, no? When we were pebbles or amoebas or whatever. No? And then perhaps all these different life forms that we see around us in the world. Nowadays we get these wonderful nature films that show us about the astonishing life forms. These are all expressing some of these symbolic moods of life. No? But here Asvapati is seeing them on their own typal planes. Those worlds themselves don't progress. They're always there. They're always like that. And for us, they are like steps of the ladder that we can, as Aurobindo says, we can have contact with them in our inner consciousness, in dreams, or we can enter those worlds. We're carrying all those worlds and possibilities of states within ourselves. But we've accepted, our souls have accepted, to incarnate in physical bodies in order to participate in the upward evolution of matter itself.
It's interesting that Sri Aurobindo has attributed power to female rather than a male, and knowledge to a male, where you would think it would be a female.
Well, when he speaks of wisdom, she is a goddess in some part. But here he's following this this truth, I would say, that the Shakti is the expression of the power of the divine. That she's the force, and that conscious force of the Supreme, who's beyond all gender, is expressed as the two in one, he and she. He's the one who gives the original will and sanction, and she carries out his will. She gives birth to all these states and forms and forces in the world. That's a little bit what's expressed here. Yeah. I know to one of the teachers of the ashram school, Mother told her, never forget that you women, you express the creative power, and you can take your impulse from a male consciousness if it seems appropriate. But you are the dynamic power. You have the ones to you have to implement and carry out.
Shraddhavan, how would you define rapture? Is it like different joy or happiness?
It's more intense. The idea of rapt is that you get picked up and carried away. You know, that you're no longer yourself. You've been seized and plucked out of your body and yourself and carried away into another state. And that's what the Greek gods used to do. You know? They would come and rape somebody human, pick them up and carry them away. Raptors, no? These are birds that come down from the heights and get hold of you. If you're rapt, something has carried you out of your normal state, your normal consciousness. So, good morning.